Hello there and welcome back to my art table. I'm going to work on another textured artwork for you, and the focus of this one is actually going to be laying down the color. I've already laid down the texture on this small canvas. You can see it, and there's texture up here and here, a little bit right here. And I put a coat of white down first, titanium white over it, and then I use my palette knife to lay down the texture. And if you want to see how I lay down texture, I do have some other videos posted on that. And I'm just going to go over it real quick with you what I used. I used the Blick acrylic modeling paste. I do also use heavy gel and this one occasionally, but for this project I use the modeling paste, a palette knife, well used as you can see. You just scoop some out and you just lay it down on your palette thus, and you can kind of work it around any way that you like when you get a texture. Then you let it dry very well. I've let this one dry for actually a couple of weeks, so it's good and dry and ready for paint. But you always want to let your texture dry extremely well before you apply paint. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay down a background of some depth. And I've just put a little bit of paint here. I'm using a sponge. This is a bronze and this is a gray. They're just these right here. You can use any colors you like. I'm using a little bit darker colors in the back because I want just a little bit of depth. So I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little of that color, add a little of the gray. Just going to use a little bit here, and I'm working on a small canvas so you can see the whole thing. This is how I work on my larger canvases. So I would like to have just a little scrum of color here and here and probably right here. So you can see I'm just using a little bit of color. This is what I'm putting down. And then what I do is I'm going to call it baking. I don't know if you're a makeup artist or anything, you probably know that term. But you lay the color down and you let it sit and kind of bake on your canvas just for a minute or two. Not any longer than that. And what that does is it kind of goes right in. And then because I'm going to come back and remove some of this, but some of it will be baked into the canvas. So as you can see, this was a little damp as well. Before I started, I always use a little bit of water with my acrylics, or medium or both, because you don't really want to use a dry paint on a dry canvas because you can't move it around as well. Sometimes you want to do that with impasto, etc., but not with things that are that you want to move around or remove. So now I'm just going to take a little wadded paper towel and kind of blot away a little of the color. And as you can see, some of it has baked right in, if you can see that. So it's just very, very subtle, and it's going to create sort of a background. This one I'm going to leave just a little more of that. I kind of like that. And here. And if you don't like what you laid down, if you quickly wipe it away with a damp sponge or paper towel, you can pretty much remove it. So that's what I'm doing right there. I just want a soft sort of background in there because I'm going to put a lighter color over this and I want some of that to come up through. Put a little right there too, just to give it a little bit of undertone. There. Okay, so that's where we are right now. I'm going to let this dry really well, and then I'm going to come over it with a lighter color, remove some of that color, and then we're going to have a nice background, and we can go ahead and put our color over our texture. Okay? Okay, so we've let that dry really well. What I'm going to do now is on my palette that I put my bronze and my gray, I'm going to pop a little white. This is just a titanium white. And I'm going to take some of this and put just a little color in there. I'm using a bronze. I want just sort of a buff tone, not too dark. And then I'm going to come over my painting with that. And some white. I'm just laying this down with my palette knife. I'm going to go over it with my brush. I'm going to take and mist my canvas just a little with my, and I don't go real close like that. I just do a light mist like that. And that helps to kind of move the paint around a bit. So I'm just going to lightly put this around. And again, I'm working on a small canvas just so you can kind of see everything. You can apply this technique and all of this to a larger canvas, of course. Nice large stretched canvas would work really, really well with this. Textures look beautiful in large canvases. Okay, so we have the white down right now, and you're thinking, okay, well, why'd you put that other color down and then paint over it? What we're going to do is we're going to remove some of that and bring up some of the underneath color. I'm using a damp sponge, and then I'm going to transfer over to some paper towel. And as you can see, I'm getting a little of that background coming up. And I definitely want that because I want a little depth to it. You know, of course, you can play around with this. If you get too much white down, you just put a little mist of paint down and wipe it, and basically your top layer of paint is going to come up. If you put too much down, you're going to take up that bottom layer as well. So right now, as you can see, we've got that bottom layer coming through underneath. So that's where I'm going to leave it now. We're going to let it dry really well. I'm going to probably put another layer of glaze on this with a different, a little more color, and then we're going to go ahead and put some colors on top of our texture. Okay. Okay, so we're back. We've let that dry. Now what I've got is my flat brush that I use. I'm using some indigo blue paint. You can use whatever blue you like. A little bit of water on my brush, just a little, and a little bit of paint. And it's literally, I'm putting it on in a flat way instead of dipping it, because I'm going to scrum a little bit of the color on right here, like that, okay? And we're just going to pick up some of that blue on top of where the texture is. And so that's what we've got kind of going on there. And let's see, I'm just going to put a little up in here. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my, I've got a little bit of a damp paper towel here. And I'm just going to kind of, again, dab and remove, and kind of blend where I really don't want too much color moved in. So I kind of like this interesting effect that I've got here and here. A lot of times when you're working with texture is kind of great, because even a boring painting, once you've applied some color on top, you can really get a very cool effect, you know, even if it's just kind of blah. Like this painting kind of looked kind of blah until we started putting down some of these colors on top of the texture. So, you know, it kind of helps you along is my point. So there we've got some of that blue. I think what I'm also going to do is use a little of this Payne's gray. And this is really a deep, deep, deep midnight blue. It's called a gray, but it's really a deep, deep color. You can see it's on my paper towel, and I'm just going to go over it a little bit more with that because I just want a little more depth. I think I better pick a little more up from my jar here. And I just might put on a little with my palette knife, and as you can see, that's laying down a little depth. Like that. Just a little bit. Just to give a little depth to that other blue that I used. And again, this is trial and error, working around, finding what you like, what colors you want in your project, what colors are going to work in your room, etc., etc. Any areas, you know, you don't like quite what you've got, good old titanium white. It's a great white block. You can just dab a little on there. It almost acts as an eraser sometimes. So sometimes if you find yourself in a spot where you've got a little color that's too rich, too vivid, or you just want to kind of erase a little spot like that. Titanium white will lighten, you know, so if you're using it over red, you're going to end up with pink. So you have to be very mindful of that sort of thing. But it is a great eraser for you. I really need to buy some more Payne's gray because mine's just drying up. I use this color quite often, and as it's not really coming through on here, but you can get a very deep, deep, deep blue, very midnight. I've done a few paintings with a lot of that, and it's always a real, it's a favorite. People like it. I like it. So kind of that's what I'm doing with this painting. This is going to be just these shades. It's going to be very neutral in tone. And I think what I'm going to do also is grab some of that on my palette. As you can see, I'm going to put this on my palette. You can see how dark that is. That's an incredibly dark blue. And when you build a lot of it up on a canvas, it comes out quite rich. It's very pretty. So if you're ever looking for a dark, dark blue and you can't seem to really find one, don't be put off by the name of Payne's gray, because it's not really gray. As you can see, it's more of a blue tone. Okay, so that's what we've got. Now what I'm doing is I'm picking up some of this on my paper towel. Sometimes brushes just aren't required. Sometimes the paper towel will do. And I'm just going to rim this painting a little bit. Actually, I'm not really digging that so much, so I think I'm going to do something a little different. I think what I'm going to do, instead of rimming it in the Payne's gray, is just use some good old-fashioned black. And a word about working with black. A little black goes a long way. So just keep that in mind when you're using it. It don't need a whole heck of a lot unless you want, you know, an incredibly black, vivid look. Just dole it out in small amounts. And this is what I mean by rimming my canvas. I'm just gonna bring that black around, and what it does is it kind of frames it, gives it a little more depth and drama, especially with a neutral painting like this. It's kind of nice to have that. And of course you can bring that in even more. You've seen those kind of paintings that have quite a bit of dark around the edges, you know, sort of like a frame. And that's what I'm doing here. I just want a little bit here just to kind of make it look, have a little more depth and interest around the edges. But that basically is going to be my finished painting. I'm going to finish it off with a coat of glaze, and then this is of course on a board, so I won't, it will need to be either matted or framed, you know, to display. But one little tip I'm going to give you is if you buy a few of the same size boards and then you buy a frame that's that size, you can create a number of different paintings, and then when you get tired of it, you just take out the painting and pop in a new one. You've already got the frame. You don't have to buy a new frame. And, you know, put it up on your wall. I've done that with a frame that I just bought at Michael's. Inexpensive, nice frame. It was on sale. And I just, every once in a while, I get tired of the painting that's in there, so I just pop it out and put another one in that's the exact same size. So just a little tip there. So that's the painting. This is what it looks like. And of course there will be some display pictures on the video. So thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Comments. Sorry for the blurriness of the previous segment. I'm learning and growing and hopefully moving in the right direction. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe or comment and let me know what you think. Thanks. Okay, just a very quick note. I did decide to take a flat brush with a little bronze on it and go over some of the blue and the texture and add a little more bronze, as you can see. And all I did was take that same bronze on a flat brush and just sort of scrummed over just to pick up a little more metallic. And now we have a finished painting.